Nahiri ripped Phyrexian metal from the remnants of the Emeria Skyclave. It was intricate work. Completion had fused the metal to stone on a molecular level, and detangling them took patience. Nahiri had nothing but time. She'd woken up in the dark to find herself alone amidst the rubble. Surprised to be alive, she peeled the Phyrexian metal from her own body, leaving painful, bloody scars. At first, she was afraid someone would come for her while she healed, but as time passed, she realized everyone must think she was dead. That was fine by her. She had the Skyclave to restore. It was no longer easy to use her lithomancy. Now every effort to shape stone to her will came at a cost. She was no longer a planeswalker. Nahiri remembered the blast of Halo searing into her as the Skyclave fell to the ground, how her body was fused to the stone. She had no idea how she survived. Perhaps the Halo had kept her alive after the fall of New Phyrexia. At first, in this new reality, the absence of her spark was more pain than she could bear. But over time, she had grown to accept that now, she was weak. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we continue the story of Aftermath, the epilogue of March of the Machine. As the multiverse heals from the invasion of New Phyrexia, we start to get a clearer picture of the consequences resulting from this massive event. We already know some of the former Planeswalkers who've lost their spark as a result of March of the Machine, one of which being Nissa Ravane. In our previous video, which you can find linked on your screen now or in the description below, we learned that Nissa struggles with her new sparkless existence, but finds that the fabric of the multiverse has also been altered thanks to the invasion tree. Omen paths have opened up, connecting planes, giving non-planeswalkers the risky chance to traverse the multiverse. In today's story, we again visit a planeswalker who was once under the will of Elesh Norn, a loyal lieutenant of Phyrexia, Nahiri. The Lithomancer, pre-completion, was lost in the attack on New Phyrexia, giving up her body and soul to help others in a seemingly redeemable act. That is after her character has caused so many headaches for a very long time. Now Nahiri crawls out of the rubble of Zendikar, born again in a new reality. What will her future bring? Before we begin, if you're enjoying the content, consider supporting us by leaving a like, becoming a subscriber or member, dropping a super thanks, and sharing it with friends. Now, let's continue with March of the Machine Aftermath Chapter 2, Beyond Repair, written by Emily Tang. Nahiri remembered how it felt to have the metal wrapped around her heart, her soul melded with the glory of the machine. How pure and untainted Phyrexia's vision of perfection was. How glorious Zendikar could be if she offered it salvation. She shoved those thoughts away. They belonged to the ghost of New Phyrexia. They were not her own. There was a mountainous cairn of Phyrexian metal she had stripped from the Skyclave over the past several months. This work would take her many more months, maybe even years to restore it. As she peeled metal layers from the wall, there was another, and beyond that, another. Maybe they were put up to protect some kind of core component to the Skyclave. This was Nahiri's burden to bear. Now uncompleted and under the Skyclave, removing all traces of New Phyrexia from it was Nahiri's small penance for all the wickedness she had done as its slave. Nahiri pulled the last wall down. Behind it was the chamber where she had bound herself to the Skyclave. As she stepped into the room, the metal sang to her, causing a wave of nausea and dizziness. She put her hand against the wall to steady herself, taking comfort in the feeling of the dead Phyrexian metal beneath her fingers. Then, she felt a section of wall that held a power deep inside and snatched her hand back. She formed a blade from stone and cut into the wall, searching for the source, her curiosity outweighing her dread. Was it some ancient New Phyrexian artifact? Something that again may threaten her free will? An object fell out into her hand. A stone hedron encasing what she recognized as her Planeswalker spark. It called out to her, offering her the power she once knew. Something bubbled inside Nahiri that she hadn't thought possible anymore. It was hope. With a surge of power, she heaved the stone upward. It ripped through the vaulted roof, letting sunlight pour through the darkness. With the hedron in hand, she climbed out into the open air. Nahiri braced herself as she opened her eyes to the world around her, seeing what she had done to Zendikar. It was worse than the wreckage of any royal or Eldrazi had caused. Sinew and metal extended as far as she could see. Rivers of black oil spread through gouges in the earth. She fooled herself in believing that she could strip the metal of the Skyclave, that it was somehow impactful on the whole of Zendikar. But in reality, it was just one insignificant piece. Her useless pickings were nothing in comparison to what new Phyrexia had accomplished. No, what she had accomplished. Phyrexia had wielded her like a hammer, but she had been the one to strike. This was her fault. There was a displacement of air, a breeze that ruffled her hair. She knew it. The telltale signs of planeswalking. A Johnny appeared in front of her. He was the last person in the multiverse she expected to see. She barely knew him, but she did remember him during their time as New Phyrexia's slaves. He had been Elesh Norn's most favored lieutenant. Ajani himself was no longer plated in porcelain. He was just himself, and still a planeswalker. He had come to look for her, but hadn't expected to find her alive. The others were all dead. Tamiyo, Lukka, probably Jace and Vraska too, though as of right now their bodies were never found. Ajani told her how the other planeswalkers had saved him, and how they were losing their sparks. Ajani asked if she was fine. Really fine. But Nahiri didn't trust his intentions to be benevolent. He had traveled the multiverse to see the destruction they had caused, and now he asked Nahiri to join him in fixing it? It wasn't just about restoring the planes, it was about restoring them, those who had been Phyrexians. They were the only two to remain, the only two who had survived the conscription of New Phyrexia and still remained planeswalkers. At least, Ajani believed her to be a planeswalker. Nahiri never liked Ajani much. He always thought he knew what was best for everyone, but he too was haunted by the same memories that haunted her. Still, there was no real reason for him to come for her. That is, unless he wanted to kill her. Ajani had been Elesh Norn's strategist, ruthless and loyal. Phyrexia changed your allegiance, but not the core of who you were. So his capacity for single-minded ruthlessness must have come from Ajani himself. He could very well be determined to seek out former Phyrexians, those planeswalkers who succumbed to their will, and end them in his own showing of penance. He made a mistake if he planned to kill her. She was ready for him. But who else can comprehend the darkness and self-loathing of what they'd done? Ajani pleaded with her, wanting them to both heal. Nahiri couldn't fathom healing, not while Ajani stood in front of her looking unscathed, looking whole. But of course he did. He had friends to take care of him, where Nahiri only had herself. Nahiri declined, blaming Ajani and his friends for what got her in this state. Those heroes of the Gatewatch would never have resorted to inviting her to New Phyrexia if they had the great Ajani Goldmane with them. Because he went and got himself completed so early in the fight, Nahiri was completed, and thus he was the reason for Zendikar's destruction. She motioned to her own body, covered in painful scabs and raised scars where she had torn the metal away. Ajani stood next to Elesh Norn and told her exactly how to beat his friends. He slaughtered the gods of Theros and murdered Jaya Ballard. And now he was telling her how she should atone? Ajani growled, unsheathing his claws and looking at Nahiri with murderous grief. He had come under pure intentions, but Nahiri knew exactly how to get under the Leonan's skin. Nahiri yanked the stone around her, throwing it in between her and the ferocious planeswalker. She'd only meant to create a wall between them, but the floor buckled beneath their feet. She had only a moment to realize she used more strength than necessary before the Skyclave collapsed. The last thing she saw was Ajani lunging toward her, eyes wide and paw outstretched without claws, screaming her name. Then she fell. As Nahiri came to consciousness, she looked up to the Skyclave's ceiling where a hole shone brightly, a tear in the fabric of the plane. She tried to sit up, but screamed in agony. Nahiri had fallen into the cairn she had made of Phyrexian metal. A machine's claw pierced through her shoulder. She was barely able to withstand the pain as she pulled it out of her body, reminding herself that flesh was able to heal. She realized then that she was no longer holding the hedron that contained her spark. She had lost it in defending herself against Ajani. She looked around and saw it nestled in the jagged metal and crawled toward it. As soon as she picked it up, she saw that the hedron was now cracked and dull. She could no longer feel her spark at all. Nahiri's last hope of regaining her planeswalking power was gone. She let the Hedron drop from her hand, not bothering to see which way it tumbled. When she emerged from the Skyclave, she was exhausted, half blind, her shoulder searing with pain. Ajani was nowhere to be seen, and Nahiri was left alone with her emotions. There was grief, yes, but beyond that was anger. She could see clearly now that the threat to Zendikar was not Phyrexia or herself, but Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers always went to a new plane, wreaked havoc, then departed without thought of the damage they caused. When Ajani arrived for his own selfish purpose, he ruined her last chance to heal Zendikar. The fury felt good. She knew how to harness anger, and she knew what needed to be done next. Nahiri was done hiding in the dark. There were still things she could do. Perhaps now she could close Zendikar off from the forces that would harm it. She would protect her broken home until her last breath. She would always be Zendikar's guardian. No more pain, no more suffering. Whatever it takes, she would never let a planeswalker set foot on Zendikar again. Well, that was a story for sure. I guess the redemption arc for Nahiri ended before it ever really began. Now, rather than being a weirdly homicidal defender of Zendikar, she's a deranged homicidal guardian of Zendikar without a spark, with a hatred for planeswalkers. So her character, yeah, it's on the up and up. I guess some characters you can't really change no matter what they do. So with this story, I just need some clarification. How does Nahiri survive the end of New Phyrexia, regain her former self, and become uncompleted? It's hinted that her being bathed in Halo may have done it, but like, everyone else needed a lot of effort to bring them back. This just felt too easy? And I get it, she's a lithomancer, so extracting the metal from her body seems plausible? But really, let's be honest, she wouldn't have hands. Where did her sword arms go? And that's not to say anything about the deeply imbued metal inside her body, which as a non-planeswalker, she just wouldn't be able to survive its extraction. I'm sorry, Nahiri, you may be hard, but you aren't this hard. Worse still, it just feels really inconsistent from a story standpoint. Another weird story point is Nahiri's spark. Everyone else just simply lost their sparks, but why was Nahiri's locked in a Hedron? Was it because she had fused herself with the Skyclave? Again, we need some consistency or at least more explanation. But even so, it's just so Nahiri that she squandered her chance of regaining her spark. She literally held that hope in her hands and threw it away because she was paranoid. Like, I get it, she was angry, but she just went full paranoid wacko at the drop of a hat. Ajani was simply offering to help, and she goes to the extreme of thinking that he was there to kill her. And that paranoia cost Nahiri her hope. Now she's stuck on Zendikar and is an uncursed version of Garruk. You know, the Dark Garruk? The Planeswalker Hunter? Yeah, Nahiri's now a Planeswalker killer, and I guess we're going to have to hate her forever now. Sorry Nahiri, you blew your shot at redemption. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a subscriber or member, leaving a like, dropping a super thanks, and sharing it with friends. It all goes a long way in helping grow this community. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!